Hello again, Steve here. I just wanted to make a few comments on a video I just watched, which I think is a great video for our time. It's called, well, it was by Stefan Molyneux, and it's at an event called A Night for Freedom in New York, I believe. I will put a link to the video in the comment section down below, because have a look at it if you haven't watched it. You probably have, but it is a fantastic speech, and I say that a little bit selfishly, maybe because I just see so many parallels. It's almost like sometimes I heard one guy once say that sometimes people who don't even really know each other that well, they think they must be reading the same books or playing off the same play sheets, because it looks like their ideology is so parallel, right? And though that could be definitely true in terms of, books that are read and philosophies that are looked at and whatnot. A lot of times, I would say what is possibly part of it as well too is just the commitment to honesty and commitment to truth leads people to similar conclusions, because there are logically there are consistently arrived at conclusions when logic is used that end up at the same general area. Just like when you send the same blood to 25 different labs, they come out with the same test because they're using a process rather than inserting said ideology here and said ideology here and so on. So in that case, I would say that we're not actually running off of an ideology. I wouldn't say that the scientific process or a mathematical system or a philosophical process is an ideology. It's more of just a commitment to truth and a submission to what the evidence will show. So that's different in ideology, I think, and therefore that's probably one of the reasons why there's such similarities. But anyways, just to overview this, I thought it was a fantastic speech, a lot of value in it, and I just wanted to comment on some of the key points I found in there. He talks about how the goal we all have is freedom, right? And the question is, which direction are we going to go? Because he talks out by saying how, we're just a fairly small group of people who want freedom, but the world is just like a factory of crazy people. It's just turning out all these mentally crazy people. I mean, all the systems, the public schools and the no breastfeeding and the propaganda for single parenthood and all this stuff is creating these traumatized children who turn out to be really messed up adults who are willing to submit to the tyranny of the state. And that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge when you're a small group in a large group of, and of course they had a bunch of whack jobs downstairs, clubs and everything, the Antifa, who were, a threat to them when they were having this conference. Meanwhile, they were talking about love and freedom, really quite odd. So, and one of the things that is such a parallel, which I'll bring up over and over again here throughout this little presentation that I'm making here, is that he talks about, how are we going to approach this then with all these crazy people? Are we going to approach it with just fighting them, right? Because that's only going to turn into civil war. That's not going to work. The history doesn't bode well for that. Or are we're going to try to make friends, And he asked the crowd, which direction you want to go. And some people want to fight, and some people want to have friends, or want to make friends as best they can. So his approach, in which he was trying to help, is not as though we don't want to fight. We got to fight the good fight. And his idea is we got to work hard at it. It's like, if you're going to fight the illness within you, you're not punching yourself. You're doing what you can. So the word fight can be used in many different ways, right? We're going to fight the illness within us. We're going to take care of ourselves in such a way and take the steps necessary to get towards the healthier state. So in that respect, so he's going to blend them both together. He's saying we got to do what we got to do. We have to make this world a better place if we want it to be a better place. If we want our illness to go away, we got to do something about it, right? Very often, as the metaphor goes. And his approach to it is we have to engage people. So his idea is that, okay, where do we want? How does the world look like beyond our? When we say we want freedom, what does that look like? And he talks about creating a vision that we can have, which he eventually talks about as our guiding star in whatever it is that we do. And when we talk to people, engage them within that vision. What does that look like? What does more freedom look like? What does a wonderful family look like? What does being able to trade and not be molested by other people around and so on, what does that all look like? That freedom message. And when we approach people on a friendly basis, then they're more apt to be able to actually listen to what we're saying. He mentioned Donald Trump here. Now, a lot of people, of course, on the left are going to dismiss anything this guy says, but nobody rationally can deny that he must have connected with a lot of people. And he must have connected with a lot of people who would otherwise have disagreed with him, because he's able to win. And if people who study, if we put aside our, ideological clouds that we tend to run under often, and look at what it is that Donald Trump, like, how did he grow up? He grew up with the power of positive thinking, the teachings of Norman Vincent Peale. This was his foundational education to begin with, the power of positive thinking. Recommended read, by the way. And, the media, of course, wants to vilify the guy, but if you look at the foundation of why he was able to do and connect with so many people, we've got to understand that all the characters who would say that they hate Donald Trump and so on, they were his friends when it was convenient for him. I mean, he was good friends with the Clintons. You can watch old videos where he's good buddies with Bill Clinton. He was good friends with Oprah Winfrey. He was good friends with the media and so on, a lot of them. Not always, but they loved him because he was controversial, he was funny, he was a bit of a libertine, which was what they were. He was all of those things, but he was a friend maker. But when he realized he had to fight the fight, he probably still has that. But a lot of times it's dismissed. But people who want freedom, if we just fight, if that's all we do, we're going to just end up in a war. Because verbal fighting is going to escalate eventually into physical fighting. We see that with people like Antifa and so on because they're so triggered. But if we are somehow to be able to get our message behind what we're doing, the message of freedom, the message of love, the message of getting along together is so powerful. And Stefan talks about going back to church. And, this was a bit of a information bait in a way in his presentation, a bit of a rhetorical device that he used in his speech to get people who might be perhaps church-going people to listen. And what he was saying was that the value of church was there. We used to talk about, people who used to go to church would talk about matters of the heart, matters of love. You go out on a Sunday morning and people would talk about community and love and the importance of taking care of children and all those sorts of things, those powerful foundational ingredients for society. And that's gone so largely, right? But he wants to go back to that. And he wants to go back to talking about truth. But truth. And then he says, not my truth, not his truth, not their truth, truth. Commitment to the process of truth. And the submission to that process of truth, of reason and evidence, in other words, philosophy, what he's talking about. Very powerful stuff. And this event that took place in New York, and there's going to be a series of them, I guess, is maybe the foundation of that. The bringing together of many people. Not saying, oh, you guys are crazy, you guys are crazy, you guys are crazy. What can we find in common, right? What can we find in common? That way we create that glue together in a way, And he talks about certain things that are the how-tos. So how can we possibly do this? Well, we see all the infighting that goes on. Well, what's the center of it all? The center of it all is the state very often. We saw, he mentioned how in Europe way back in the day, the religious wars, right? You had Protestants against Catholics and against Anabaptists and against Lutherans and all this sort of stuff. They were all fighting, and it was, there was a time when apparently you couldn't pass a tree in Germany without somebody hanging from it, some heretic. It was so bad. So the people got together and said, hey, we got to separate church and state. This is ridiculous. So they separated church and state, and thereafter there was no more religious wars in Europe. So he says, with all the race wars and the sex wars and the economic wars and so on that are going on, how about we work towards separating race and state? How about we separate sex and state? How about we separate economics and state, and so on? And then we can have very, very limited place for government, but allow people to get along, and then the races can get along. We're such a global community now. We're never going to completely go back to just some little nation over there, and so there's always going to be this mixing going on. We have to get along. We cannot have this infighting. It's too destructive. Now I think that he made the next part he went into was very, very powerful, because he talked about selling a movement, right? And this was such a parallel to my freedom walk. And those of you who don't know, In 2006, I did an 8,000 kilometer or 5,000 mile walk across the basically most of the Canadian wilderness, carrying on the major roads, mind you, but carrying this flag on the back, Freedom Walk, and you see it. It looks religious. It's got the dove and the olive branch, but I just like that symbol because the dove is a symbol of peace. It's an offer of peace, and the olive branch is there's hope and peace in there, right? So my vision at the time was so parallel to what Stefan's talking about. He's talking about selling a message of peace, love, freedom. My message was freedom, peace. No, sorry, mine was friendship, peace, freedom. Because what I was telling people as I went along, I did speeches, I did podcasts, and it wasn't very effective in terms of reaching many people, but I think the message was still so parallel to this. If we have freedom, or if we have friendship rather, when we can develop friendship and we see the connection between us, then there's more of an openness to have peace, because we won't be so apt to fight. We'll be more apt to listen to each other. And when we can get to that point, when we have peace together, we can have freedom. Because the opposite of peace is war and tyranny. And I don't know how the hell freedom comes from that. So I was just amazed at the parallel there. That was very good. So he talked about selling the vision, selling a vision, whatever vision is that we have. Selling, what does that vision actually look like? What does it look like in terms of peace within the families? What does it look like in terms of prosperity and growth and sustainability within societies? What does that all look like? And so much of that, everybody wants, right? It's just how we approach it. And he talks about how once we can get people to buy into the value of such a message, then they're open to listen. How can we get there? What's our methodologies? They're more open to it, right? Whereas on the flip side, government, and what so many people have bought into, does have a message. It has a message of give up your freedom to us, and we will give you security, we will give you welfare, we will give you comfort. And here's the best line I think he had in the whole speech, which is that it is something, but what it is a childish fantasy of amniotic sac indifference to maturity. Isn't that a wonderful line? It just flowed off his tongue. He's so good at that Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if he practiced it or not, but it was great. And it's true, Whereas we want responsibility because we want freedom, right? But the method that so many of us have been using is this punch, 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 as he was talking about, right? And when we do that, here's another one he used. We become a caricature that they can exploit, right? Because we were just basically labeled as terrorists or something like that, right? Whereas when people see for sure, and they can agree with why it is that we're so active, why our activism is going forward, they can understand it. They can understand, because we use analogies such as he used there, that if we're sick, right, we're going to do what we can to fight against the sickness because we want to be healthy again, right? And if they see that there's all kinds of issues within society and so on, and it's going in a certain direction, we're able to display that vision, then many people are going to get on board with us. And this is where my sort of stuff comes down to the Inner Genie project, innergenie.com. It's under development, which is to help people with finding out what it is that they want. So the sales pitch for what Stefan is talking about is to, in the friendship stage of things, is to actually listen to people. What is it that they want? Try to find out what they want, and then to see that what we have is a vehicle for that, right? And this is what I do with the Inner Genie project, is to sit down with people, find out what they want, and then see what we can do to work together to get there. And part of that begins with a friendship relationship. Also, setting the example is so important, right? And Stefan did a good job in there. He talked, because he used sometimes old scriptural analogies. One of them was the shining star that the wise men came to find Jesus, where they followed the star. And if he talked about, to be the light that we want in the world, this is the leadership, the call to leadership within the world, to make the world a better place, which is to be the light that we want to be in the world, be the light that people look up to and admire to follow. And that all adds to fighting the good fight, and a lot more peace, a lot more friendship in the world, a lot more peace in the world, and a lot more freedom in the world. Great presentation, Stefan, once again, the link for that presentation is in the comment section down below. And please subscribe, like, and share if you found value here. Take care, Steve. Talk to you later. Bye for now.